Following an event in which many workers were seriously injured, manufacturing employees stormed into the offices to demand justice because their leader refused to accept blame. Things quickly turn violent as the staff begin to smash down everything they can find. When the police arrive, the employees push back, and Miho jumps on a cop and begins beating him up. More cops rush after him to apprehend and arrest him. Even now, the footage of Miho's arrest is available online, and youngsters enjoy laughing at it. This upsets Miho's daughter Selma, who collects a bunch of horse dung and rubs it on her classmate's face. After speaking with the headmaster, her mother Elise is at a loss for what to do. Selma has been behaving out since her parents divorced and Miho was sentenced to jail, but he was just freed with an ankle monitor. Selma watches the television one night while living with her father and learns that in Latin America, 1,000 times more acidic rain is falling, killing hundreds of wild creatures. Pollution and global warming have generated this downpour, which scientists believe will soon reach the northern hemisphere. The next day, it begins to rain fiercely, and Elise learns Selma left her room's window open, so she places a towel on the floor to absorb the water. Then she falls asleep on her daughter's bed, not realizing the towel is losing color. The following day, it isn't raining, but it's still quite cloudy, and people are paying close attention to the news because rain is appearing in unexpected places across the country. At labor, Miho notes that the moist earth has an unusual consistency. Elise calls him at that moment, saying she wants to pick Selma up from school early since she is concerned about the weather. Her car is in the garage, so Miho will have to drive her. However, when they get at school, they discover that the class has gone for a horse ride, and the students have left their phones behind. They take the road to the forest to find Selma, but all of the parents have thought the same thing, and there is a traffic congestion that prevents them from passing. Huge heavy clouds are already developing above the woodland, so Miho drives off the road in a desperate search for his daughter. Meanwhile, Selma isn't a skilled rider, so she's stuck in the jungle while her classmates continue on. A few raindrops begin to fall, burning the sticks on the ground and injuring the horses, who flee in fright and cause Selma to fall. When Miho and Elise get close enough to the forest, they find there isn't enough room for the car to get through, so Miho exits the vehicle and walks on foot, first exploring the stables where the unfortunate horses are going insane. Selma is also escaping, and she eventually returns, reconciling with her father as he emerges. They hurry up and enter the training facility just before it starts raining. Some droplets make it through the ceiling gaps and burn the earth. Miho seeks for blankets to cover themselves while calling Elise to inform her of their whereabouts. Elise struggles to drive since the heavy rain obscures her vision, but she eventually locates the building and parks outside so Miho and Selma may enter. As they return to the road, they hear people screaming in anguish from the acid rain. They eventually discover the road blocked again, and they are unable to return because automobiles are lining up behind them, all of which have their paint melted away. Elise sees an opening and drives to the right, only to become stopped in a new portion of the traffic congestion. This permits some people to tug at their doors, and a man with a severely disfigured face even makes it in, but Miho quickly throws him out and ensures that the doors are properly locked. Then Elise sees another gap and drives as fast as she can, shoving many cars out of the path in the process. Selma can't stand the panic any longer and breaks down as she sees the paint on the ceiling change hues. Moments later, the rain stops, and the area is covered in melted bodies and objects from the acid. The family pulls into a supermarket parking lot and gathers a large amount of clothing and blankets to cover themselves and the car. Elise phones his brother at work, but he is unable to join them since the roads are blocked. Miho tries to call his sweetheart, but only gets voicemail. For the next few hours, the family drives away, aiming to exit the nation, as many people are attempting to do. In the evening, the automobile ultimately stops working due to the acid damage, and the back door becomes stuck. Miho kicks it a few times to open it, warning Selma not to breathe in case the acid splatters. Afterward, the family travels around until they come across an abandoned building. Miho checks to see whether there are any other people inside and is startled to find the place adorned for an unimaginable celebration. There's also a cat stealing party food, and Selma wants to pet it, but Elise stops her because its fur may contain acid. Miho finally contacts his sweetheart and confirms she is fine, but he quickly loses signal. The tap water is running, but they are unsure if it is safe, so Miho adds some and leaves it for the cat to test. Selma becomes enraged at the poor animal's mistreatment and instantly empties the dish into the sink. At least Elise discovered some bottled water and gave it to Selma. Then they use foil trays and tape to cover their feet for more protection. Minutes later, the bowl appears melted, indicating that the tap water is not safe. The only thing in the fridge is alcohol and party food, so they eat that for dinner. Selma is concerned because she does not believe they can survive on foot, and when her parents attempt to discuss options, a fight follows. They rant at one another without noticing Selma's request to stop, and Miho becomes so enraged that he destroys a glass and exits the room. Later, they fall asleep, but they can hear raindrops falling through weak points in the ceiling. Selma can't sleep and starts to seek for the cat, only to discover a trail of blood that leads her to the unfortunate kitty's lifeless body. Selma is upset and returns to her mother for consolation. The following morning, the family returns to the road. It isn't pouring right now, and many more people are attempting to exit the nation on foot. The crowd grows larger as the hours pass, and when they eventually reach the bridge, there are dozens of people and cars stranded. It turns out that the police are blocking the way and only allowing small groups of people to pass every few minutes for security concerns. The mob doesn't care and continues to press against each other, causing Elise to separate from her family. When the police finally let another small group pass, Elise is pushed ahead as well. She tries to inform the cops that her family is out there, but they ignore her and force her to keep going. As she crosses the bridge, she notices a large hole in the center, which explains the police's attitude. The crowd is becoming more violent by the second, and Selma is practically crushed, so the police must use tear gas to disperse them. At that point, the bridge makes an unusual noise, and when the group looks up, they notice it is collapsing. The falling debris kills a few individuals right away, and the remainder begin rushing back, but the folks in front haven't caught on and continue to press to cross, leading both masses to crash. Elise tries to reach her family, but she is entangled amid the shoving masses, and the turmoil forces the railing to break. A few people fall into the river, including Elise, whose skin quickly burns due to the acidity. Selma realizes this and abandons the bridge to hurry to the shore, anxious to save her mother. However, Miho pursues her and stops her just before she touches the ocean, forcing them to watch in tears as Elise's dead body drifts away. Because the bridge can no longer be used, the police transport the remainder of the throng to a military base. Miho can phone his sweetheart, but Elise's brother does not answer. The mob is then divided into various military trucks, and they are given the little bottled water they have for the trip. The trucks eventually find the route blocked, so the troops order everyone to exit the vehicles and continue on foot, lighting red smoke as a signal to ensure no one gets lost. When they notice the black clouds approaching, they start running as quickly as they can. Selma is feeble and frequently trips, so Miho must pull her up and support her as they go. This delay forces them to lose the crowd, but happily Miho discovers a nearby tunnel and rapidly pulls out all of the leaves and dirt to make enough place for them to hide just before the storm begins. There's so much rain falling that some of it is melting the dirt in the tunnel, forcing Miho and Selma to continue crawling in the darkness. Miho eventually slips and falls, and the acid humidity causes him to bleed. Moments later, they discover the tunnel exit. It has stopped raining, but Miho's phone does not have enough battery to call for rescue. The duo travels for hours and ultimately comes across a few residences, but no one answers Miho's anxious knock. Exhaustion and suffering eventually overcome him, and he collapses on the ground, leaving Selma to cry out in the middle of the street for help. When Miho awakens, he finds himself in one of Deborah and her son's houses. Deborah gives them bottled water and clean clothes but refuses to share her food because she only has enough for herself and the boy. Selma travels around the home, discovering a chamber filled of acid stains and a bizarre gadget protected by plastic. When she is about to touch it, Deborah stops her and explains that it is necessary for her son's dialysis. Miho volunteers to assist her in bringing the boy downstairs so that he is not exposed to the acid. Deborah is so appreciative that she agrees to share some food with them and let them spend the night. Then Miho borrows an axe and attempts to break into the neighbor's house, but the dark clouds are approaching, so he must hurry back before making any headway. The storm begins to rage outside, and Deborah realizes the house will not stand, so she takes a difficult decision. Miho chooses to sleep in the garage rather than a room for safety, and once he and Selma have settled in, Deborah surreptitiously locks their door. She then goes to lie down with her son and sings him to sleep while waiting for the finale. Soon, several areas of the home begin to melt, particularly the water taps. The paint stains the walls like blood, and a nasty smoke emerges from the heater. Miho and Selma awaken to the sound of the home slowly collapsing and attempt to check on their hosts, only to discover the door shut. As the deadly vapors reach Deborah and the boy, the upper floor crumbles, forcing Miho to take Selma away from the door while yelling the boy's name. She does not want to abandon their new acquaintances, but Miho simply forces her into Deborah's car, opens the garage, and drives away. It's quite dark outside, and Miho does his best to drive quickly using only the front lights as a guide. The automobile is electric, and the computer voice continues declaring that the systems are failing, forcing the vehicle to stop for the safety of its passengers. Miho smacks it a few times to make it work again and continues to drive with no end goal in sight. After driving for hours with no rain, they come across nothing but more open fields, and Michał stops the automobile. Selma tries to convince him to admit he's lost, but Michał snaps and yells at her before exiting the car. Michał's leg soon begins to burn, so he returns to the car, only to find Selma gone. She tries to flee, but the smoldering ground makes it difficult, so she climbs on top of a sinking structure. Michał hears her scream and drives toward her, but the car begins to sink in the mud, forcing him to continue on foot. He reaches Selma barely in time and takes her on his back, causing his legs to burn horribly as he travels. They return to the car and climb on top, where Michał passes asleep. The next morning, Selma wakes up to the sound of a vehicle and realizes that the military has arrived to rescue them. The two are escorted to a safe refuge, where Michał receives medical attention and Selma inquires about her uncle. They don't find him in any shelter directories, but they do discover the name of Michał's girlfriend, who is regrettably deceased. When Selma is finally permitted to visit her father, she comforts him and decides not to tell him the awful news just yet. Make sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you can see more videos like this. Thank you for watching.